Economy. I'm Monica Profit, and I'm here with Naveed Isanola from Algorand. He's the VP of Engineering and Research. Welcome, Naveed. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a great pleasure to be here, Monica. Thank you.
Yeah, this is really fun. I see that you've got like a ukulele in the background, as well as all kinds of.
That's right.
Yeah, this. I've got paintings in the background, so I can see this this balance of your right brain, left brain, just a bit. Is that your instrument, or is that like somebody else's?
It's actually my stepdaughter's, but she decided she didn't want to play it. I bought it for her. It's so beautiful that I have it here when I'm thinking. So I'm playing the ukulele while I'm trying to figure out some problem.
Oh my God, that's fantastic. I've heard that mathematicians and musicians think very, very similarly. So not to pigeonhole you as a mathematician, but I can see the two like overlapping quite a bit. So
that's pretty funny.
That's great. So we've talked a little bit before this, and I really wanted to go back to how you describe Algorand in like your elevator pitch of what Algorand is. Sure. I know that you guys are pretty far along now. You're not a super new company, so elevator pitching isn't really what you have to do all the time.
Right.
But yeah, when you try to explain to your stepdaughter or your grandma like what you do, what when they say, "Honey, what are you up to?" How do you explain it?
Yeah, I think those are different audiences than my elevator pitch is typically aimed at. Most people that I speak to initially, they already have some idea of what a blockchain is and the problem domain that it solves. And I think the elevator pitch there, the one we've been going with, is Algorand is the first blockchain in cryptocurrency that fundamentally solves the blockchain trilemma. We are simultaneously scalable, decentral, and secure in a way that's never happened before. Now that's not as effective when I talk to my stepdaughters or my wife, because for them, they don't know what a blockchain is, and there's a lot more learning there. I think for them, it's Algorand is a way for us to promote trust across the entire world without having to meet first.
Right. That's a great way of putting it, without having to meet first, without having to know anyone's name.
Exactly.
Can still trust them. That's very cool. And so when you talk about how you're solving the blockchain trilemma, talk to me about how proof of stake is a major component of that, because I think that, a lot of people just don't understand the difference between proof of work and proof of stake, but then what proof of stake really does for those three main problems in blockchain. That's really interesting.
Sure. So I think it's worth at least giving a high level picture of what proof of work is first, because the comparison is where most of the storytelling happens. Proof of work is this wonderful concept, I guess, that was invented about 11 years ago in Satoshi's white paper introducing Bitcoin. And in that, he wanted a way to secure what's going on and electing who has an opportunity to say what the next block will be. What he did is came up with this cryptographic riddle that the whole world tries to solve. And the whole world races to solve it. Whoever wins that race, winner takes all, is able to propose the next block. There's some problems with this, I think, that are obvious almost immediately. If everyone's trying to solve the problem and only one person wins, all that extra work is just gone. It's just wasted. That's the work, but that work is, except for that one person who wins, it's just wasted away. Proof of stake is fundamentally different. Proof of stake is, instead of all of us wasting our energies trying to solve one problem and winner takes all, if you have stake in the system, if you have some value tied up in the system in some fashion, then you have the ability to represent yourself when it comes to selecting those blocks. And there's some nuanced approaches around proof of stake. The challenge of proof of stake is some versions of proof of stake are really easy to implement. And the most common one that we hear about is this one, delegated proof of stake. This is kind of how the United States Congress works. We, if it works at all, I'll leave that for a different discussion, right? But you select some representatives on your behalf. And because there's 500 plus of them, but not 350 odd million, they're able to hopefully come to decisions in a more timely fashion and actually make progress. And that's delegated proof of stake. The challenge, though, is delegated proof of stake is not decentral at all. Obviously, by definition, you have picked representatives, and those representatives, if you find some way to corrupt them or their behavior is incented by mechanisms that are different than the population, you run into problems where the system is no longer working on the behalf of everyone, just on the behalf of some. And then there's this sort of version of that that's called bonded proof of stake. Instead of simply electing someone and that person represents us, anyone can elect themselves. The way they do that is they take some value and they sequester it, and they're like, okay, I am now in the system, I've committed this value to the system, and if I do anything bad, just take my bond away. Now I can vote on, as part of the block proposals or whatever else needs to happen in the system. And it seems secure because we all have skin in the game now. The challenge of, unfortunately, is all you've done is elevated bad behavior to be, so long as the prize is worth more than what you bonded, you're still motivated to do it. So our founder, Silvio Micali, came up with a different way. And it was based on this realization. All these other approaches have the security of the entire system dependent on some small subset of the system, whether it's the miners in proof of work, the representatives in delegated proof of stake, or those who give up some value in bonded proof of stake. There is still a small group inside the entire population. In pure proof of stake, Algorand's approach, we ensure the security of the system by having everyone in the system participate in the election of blocks and in any voting that needs to happen.
Okay, so how do you get everyone involved? Because that sounds like the election. I mean, the 2016 election would have been a very different thing, I imagine, if we could have had everyone in participating. So how do you get everyone to participate?
So the way we do that is, and I think the real key here is, how do you get everyone involved and still make it fast enough where decisions actually happen? Because there's 7.7 billion people in the world, roughly. Getting all of them in one place to make a decision sounds like a challenge all by itself, and it is. So the way Algorand works is, Algorand uses many one-off committees of a constant size. And these committees are effectively constantly sampling the entire population. So everyone has a chance of being a part of this committee, and there's several committees used for every block proposal. This starts to get a little technical, but the net of it is we are sampling the entire population in such a way that our sample is effectively the same, if you believe in statistics, as the voting of the entire population. And as a result, we get all the performance of a small group of people doing the voting, all the security of having everyone be involved.
That's amazing. So someone, if they were in that system, they could pretty much guess that they would be called on, like, say, once every 6 or 60,000 times. And they know that it's almost like a jury duty approach. Like, you have to show up, you have to do it, and then you go home and you know that the whole system just works. But you had to show up that one day.
That's exactly correct, except for, unlike jury duty, we have made the amount of work required so easy. You don't have to take off time off work. And I think that's one of the challenges of a proof of work or some of these other systems is you need expensive hardware to participate. That means, once again, not everyone can. Algorand, our technology is such that it could run on something as small as any phone today for sure, but even like a Raspberry Pi, which is
oh my goodness,
$20 computer, yes.
Right, a $20 computer. I've used those before. I used to make interactive art installations, and I would Raspberry Pi. So that's great. Wow, that's really incredible. So, I mean, were you always a diehard proof of stake person over proof of work, or did you not really know about those options?
So before I came to Algorand, I didn't really know about those options. I was telling you a little bit in our background conversation, I have been interested, as a techie is interested in blockchain. I like hardware. I like setting up computers and having the idea of having all these like miners running and solving problems and communicating with a large network seemed like a cool thing to do. So I've been doing it, but I never thought of it as something real that the world would use to solve any actual problem, because it's too involved, too techy. The barrier to entry is very high, and not to mention incredibly loud. So my basement was filled with these blasting fans trying to keep these GPUs cool. So none of that made any sense to me for a real system. And until I heard about the details of proof of stake from Silvio, I didn't really believe that there was some path here that would make sense.
All right, so you just dropped the name. So Silvio, tell me about this mythical creature, Silvio.
Well, I'm not sure I can do all that is Silvio justice, but I'll make an attempt. I'd say
Silvio. That is. Tell me of all that is Silvio.
he is an amazing person. I've been around, amazingly energetic, intelligent people in many domains and many industries before. But even having had those wonderful opportunities, Silvio is rare. One of the stories I like to tell about Silvio, just so people get a sense of him, and the quick background is, for those who don't know, Silvio Micali is a professor at MIT who founded many of the foundational tech that is used in cryptography today. He's one of the arguably founders of modern cryptography. The little lock on your browser that indicates you're at a safe website, the public key infrastructure that goes behind that, he invented. Most of the modern, I think of them as sort of version 2 blockchain projects that are using technologies like VRF, etc. These are technologies that Silvio invented as well. And Algorand's the only company in the world benefiting from technology Silvio's inventing today, as opposed to decade-old stuff. Silvio has a Turing Award. A Turing Award is roughly the equivalent of a Nobel Prize in computer science.
Oh my goodness.
And the story that I'd like to tell with that background is I had an incredible honor of traveling to Singapore with Silvio. He was asked to speak at a conference. There's an annual meeting there where the top PhD and postdoc students in the world have the opportunity to meet the Nobel Prize winners, field medalists, and Turing Award winners around the world in one place for a week-long session where they can connect and have an opportunity to engage smart, bright young people with the smart, bright, those with experience who've already done it. And in this rarefied group, Professor Micali, Silvio was asked to give the keynote. So even in that group, yes, he's a star, and it's an honor to work with him every single day.
Wow, that sounds amazing. That sounds just amazing. And he's told you some piece of advice, I think, that really like got you to jump on board at Algorand. What was this? He's not only a super smart, like super genius, but he also actually is pretty wise, I think.
So I think, yeah, he has a lot of abilities and domains beyond simply the technical that make him particularly wonderful to work for. But I do recall the line that I think he got me with, the hook. After we had about a 2-hour conversation, our first meeting, where he's telling me about Algorand and why I should come on board, he said to me, Naveed, one of the great joys in life is working with people that you respect and that you have a connection with. And I feel that we have that, and you should come work for me. And I did the not thing because I didn't want to give anything away, but I was thinking, I really want to come work here.
I really like that. You just sealed the deal, dude. So now you do work at Algorand. You've been there for how long now?
I think I was the first official employee. So yes, I started at Algorand around January, February of 2018, depending on how you count such things. And prior to me, the group that consisted of Algorand was Silvio and his research team, and another professor at MIT, Nikolai Zoldovich, and his distributed engineering research team. And so collectively, they formed the nuclei, but they were people that Silvio has known for years and out of academia. But when he decided he was going to create a company, the first official hire outside that group was myself.
Excellent. Right? That is really cool. So we now know like kind of this MIT nucleus that like built Algorand, really that Algorand came out of. In terms of who is building on Algorand, can you give me a couple of use cases? And for the average layperson, what would mean building on Algorand to them?
Okay, that's a really good question. So Algorand, we seek to be a means of payment, not just a store of value like Bitcoin wishes to be, but we want to actually be able to handle transactions and meaningfully at scale, because that we can enable some use cases that are harder to do on other blockchains. One of the cool ones I think that we have already talked about is Asset Block is taking commercial real estate. I think they currently have $60 million of commercial real estate that they are tokenizing and making it possible to trade on the Algorand blockchain.
Excellent. Wow, that's really amazing. I can't wait to meet the Asset Block people. I'm the founder of Rise Markets, in addition to being, a new trust economy. So we're also tokenizing real estate, not commercial, but other real estate internationally as well as domestically. And I was looking at that, and that specifically, actually, we've talked with other proof of stake chains, and just looking at how that can make more sense, especially in something like an asset-backed transaction that's so much more real life, engaged. And also, you want to, when you're thinking about bringing more people into that playing space, how do you do so in a way that you don't lose so much energy to something like proof of work, and you also don't lose their ability to be a part of the block.
You're cutting out a little bit, so I missed some of that.
Oh, it's all right. It gets. I'm going to do this because they'll hear it, and you don't have to comment on it because they snip it up as they need to. But
sounds good.
I'm just going to notice that. So anyway, yeah, that's a really interesting thing. I've been looking a lot at proof of stake options because I just really love what proof of stake offers to the average consumer and to the average participant. That proof of work, of course, is a lot more. It's a higher bar and it's a lot more difficult to be a part of. So
I think it's worth going into a little bit more detail if you're interested there.
please do.
So Algorand, some of the sort of characteristics about it that are pretty cool are not only are we able to maintain 1,000 transactions per second at global scale across the entire planet, but we're also able to commit a block every 4.3-ish seconds. And what
Oh,
that
wow.
means is that anything you do on Algorand blockchain is nearly instantly done. So in the Bitcoin world, if you're familiar, if you do a transaction, it may take hours to settle. And the bigger the transaction, the longer you have to wait. And with price volatility, that's an issue. But if you
Yeah.
want to trade things on Algorand, you can swap them instantly. You and I can decide you want to sell me the house that you have tokenized, and I have some, I don't know, stable coin over here that I want to swap your way. 4.3 seconds later, we're done without any risk to either party.
That's fantastic. I just love that. So do you have any other use cases beyond transactions that are asset backed, or is that mostly like where you're really sticking, is like trying to kind of combine means of payment at scale with also something that backs that payment mechanism?
So there's some use cases that I probably can't get into too much detail because I think they're still on the other side of NDA, but let me talk about them in a general way because they sort of appeal to my sense of the way the world should be.
Kind of your futurism and the use cases of
Yeah,
the future? Okay, cool. That'd be
exactly.
great.
So there's a company that it wants to take the power generated by the sort of new popularity around having solar panels on your houses, and it's tokenized that this token a watt hour or a kilowatt hour, and now all of a sudden with that information tokenized on the blockchain, you can create an economy around it. Right now,
I've
in
seen
most
these.
in most domains, you can only sell back to the utility, but now you can create this interesting arbitrage opportunity just between prices across the day. And you can also sell to that person down the way who might, because of where they are on the grid or what sort of generation or power needs they have at that moment, can't be met by what the utility is able to output. And I just love the idea of, let's take something amazing like next generation power production that is clean and green and connect it up with a new technology like blockchain, which decentralizes the market, the buyers and sellers, without having to necessarily go through the utility for every
Yeah.
single action.
Yeah, I've heard about some of these. Not that I knew that specifically Algorand was in this space, but I've heard about these little microeconomies that are hopefully going to become larger than microeconomies around, selling directly your energy and other types of goods. It's really cool.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
There's a cool bit of technology that we built on Algorand for the purpose of selling our own tokens, a on-chain Dutch auction. So this particular trading scenario, it's possible to auction off your kilowatt hours using the on-chain Dutch auction, just repurposing what we already had there and to get a real, efficient rate on that kilowatt hour.
That is so neat. I love it. Is this kind of what you mean by decentralized finance? I know you've used that term before.
Yeah, so this is an example of DeFi, but it's one that I particularly love because I'm quite excited around green technologies, and I think that's a direction the world should strongly consider. It may be, the only path we have available to us soon.
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of economic exchange and decentralized finance, what do you feel is, aside, I know green energy is, who would not be very passionate about green energy in general? But what do you feel are some other verticals that are ripe for new ways of economic exchange that you think Algorand is going to be tackling soon?
It's a great question. The whole space of DeFi, where we think the characteristics of a pure proof of stake system like Algorand's blockchain is probably perfectly suited for the high transaction velocity, but also the instant settlement with no risk to price volatility. So the two sort of collections that we're working with are on the high end, sort of traditional finance companies who are looking at blockchain as, what is this curiosity and how do I leverage it before it makes me a relic of the past? And they're really excited because some of the work they do, they're in this position where they are one large institution to another. They don't really have trust there, and there's no good third-party intermediary that isn't a government that can work, and governments usually want a lot to be in that mediation position, and also they have their own agenda. So when it's a cross-border payment, other fees may be applied just because the government now has oversight.
Yes,
So
that's true.
so this is an example of decentralized finance at the highest level. And one way that we're taking that on is where Algorand is the first blockchain that's a part of ISDA, the International Swaps and Derivatives Association. And this association, all the big financial institutions are a part of, they've had a standard way of creating swaps, derivatives, loans, all these sort of financial instruments. And Algorand is making those first-class citizens on a blockchain. So it's as simple as I want to create a collateralized loan with these terms, and boom, it's on the blockchain, and it just works between all the parties involved.
That
But
is incredible.
The really cool thing I think there is, once we build it for the huge multi-billion-dollar companies, those in the third world that are completely underserved, that have no banks at all, can do the exact same thing with each other.
Yes.
There's no additional cost or complexity for me to instantiate a collateralized loan for a house or a small business as there would be for something much, much larger.
Yeah, that's just incredible to me when I see that soon there's going to be a reduction in fees to such a degree that everybody's truly going to be able to participate in the global economy and the local economy. It's an exciting time. Absolutely. Have you always, I mean, it sounds like you've not always been involved in fintech and payment systems so much. It sounds like, you've really been more an open source type of person. Did you go to school explicitly just for computer science, or did you have, I don't know, what was your actual background, and how did you end up getting into such a broad base in the computer sciences?
Sure. For my actual background, I have undergraduate degrees in computer science and biochemistry. The biochemistry is because my father's a doctor and I didn't know what to do with my life.
Right.
The computer science was, I found my passion in undergrad, and from there I just focused on computer science from that point onward. I worked on a master's as well in computer science, and I've been a systems developer, architect, or engineering leader for, at this point, a couple of decades. I don't want to say how many decades, because then that sort of has its own. But no, it's totally correct. I don't have a background in finance. My background is in building things at scale. I've consulted with some of the biggest companies in America for sure, and even around the world. And most recently at Mozilla, I've also had the opportunity to work on one of the most popular open source projects, and create some technology the whole world is using. So it's been a fun ride so far.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun ride. And you guys have got a new fun ride coming up in a few weeks, right? With the V2 launch?
That's right. That's right. So I think one of the things that I thought was always interesting about the blockchain world is in the more traditional software world, releases happen on a regular cadence. Sometimes every couple of months, sometimes as often as every couple of weeks, like with Firefox. These blockchain projects, they all seem to be one and done. They stand up something and it's pretty exciting, and then you never see much innovation from them ever again. I think that may be changing soon. Hopefully the culture will shift. But Algorand, we've been around for a little over 100 days, and we're about to land our version 2 already. November 15th, 3 new key pieces of technology will be dropping, and we're really excited about that.
That is great. November 15th is the big day then. Is that what you're sort of like gearing up for?
Yes. So I guess let's say mid-November, because my former VP of engineering hat, I never committed to a date publicly. I
like,
stick to that.
Scratch that. We're just going to say mid-November. Which could be Thanksgiving if you think about mid being very wide.
That's right. That's right.
Right. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I really love hearing all about Algorand. Do you want to like touch on anything else that specifically that users would want to check out, or when they go to your site, what will they expect? What can they do?
Yeah. So I think a quick teaser of what's going to be in that release is worth doing. So at the end of May, we stood up our technology, and what we wanted to accomplish there is prove to the world that we have a real team, that we can really build something and it really will work. And so we did all that. And now for last 100 days, at this point, 120 days maybe, we've had this untested pure proof of stake consensus protocol working at scale, and really doing everything we said we would be able to do, 1,000 transactions per second, et cetera, world scale. But what we didn't have is some of these constructs that people want. They want programmatic smart contract-like functionality. They want to be able to instantly make a token for themselves so they can ICO and Moon. Apparently that's what people are very excited by. So we're bringing that functionality as templates directly into Algorand in November. It'll be possible to create any sort of asset you wish, whether it's a fungible asset, a non-fungible asset, or a security asset with restrictions. So you can freeze it, unfreeze it, make sure it follows government compliance. We noticed those use cases are very, very important outside the simple crypto world, and we want to make sure that we have a broad appeal. We are supporting batch transactions. We call them atomic transfers, where you can have multiple transactions land together or not at all. So you and I could engage in a house for token swap, and I get the house and you get the tokens, or neither of us get anything and nothing is lost. Right now, there's always a risk involved if you do that on blockchain. And then finally, we are bringing layer 1 smart contracts via ALGO script, which we're really excited by. It's going to provide a lot of really rich functionality while still maintaining that high performance and high security guarantee that we want to make sure is always present in our blockchain.
That is wonderful. Oh my gosh, this is fantastic. Actually, I can't wait to talk to you on a sideline, like outside of this. Like, I don't want to bore our listeners with all of my detailed questions, but I have so many follow-up questions. And actually, after your launch, I would love to hear how it went, and maybe we can do another follow-up early next year or in a few months, just see how fast you guys are doing your version, relaunches. This is it's an exciting time, especially after watching crypto, be exciting, yet very, very baby-like, very early, and then kind of go through its winter where people were kind of running from it, thinking that if there was nothing there. And I thought, no, there's so much here, but only the serious people are left. And it's lovely to see what's happening with the serious folks now that people have kind of seen their way through the crypto winter. So I appreciate it. Well, thank you so much. I mean, this has been fantastic having you on the show. Thank you for talking about Algorand and your background with Mozilla and everything else. It's just been great. Do you have anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, it's been a great pleasure talking with you. It's awesome to see so much interest in the space, and thank you for the opportunity to let people know about Algorand.
Of course. Well, thank you, Naveed. It's been a pleasure talking with you. And I guess this is Monica Prophet with Naveed Insula, and I'll catch you next time.